Maybe you're one of those people who needs more money. You work hard, or would like to, but bills pile up. Maybe you have skills or time that employers don't hire. Maybe your community needs more control over jobs, money, housing, fuel, food prices, and bank loans. Maybe you think our nation needs healing and planting more than war. So maybe you'd like the economy to be more fair and more fun. Rather than wait around for these good things to happen, we can print our own money, trade it for goods and services, then lend it interest-free. Community money is circulating in hundreds of communities worldwide, adding millions of dollars worth of spending power to local economies. They stimulate new businesses and green jobs. They strengthen the sense of community. Local currencies connect people, while national money just controls people. And they're legal. They don't replace dollars, they replace lack of dollars. Some city governments even accept them for taxes or fees. My book, Hometown Money, explains how to design, print, issue, promote, and grow a local currency. I've done it in Ithaca, New York, where millions of dollars worth of Ithaca hours have been traded since 1991. You can do it too.
Yes, indeed. It's got to cheese off the banks a little bit because they've had a monopoly on currency for quite some time.
Yeah, so they make it up out of nothing.
We've got a video coming up talking about fractional reserve lending and how banks make it up from nothing. But the one thing you got to remember is our economic nightmare is caused by these banks just totally mishandling the monetary system.
Yes, we're in the 100-year anniversary of the creation of the Federal Reserve.
And we're going to be talking about that in just a bit. I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
This is the alternative currency portion of the program where we start talking about the real solutions that are going to end poverty on the monetary scale. So what do you got?
Well, we got a place in Mexico where they're trying the same idea.
Check it out.
Small villages are experimenting with an alternative to the peso, which is legal in some parts of the world, but the Bank of Mexico says the villagers may have violated the law. John Holman investigates.
Irene Castellanos heads out to buy her morning groceries in the Mexican town of Espinal, but she won't be paying with pesos only. This is the tumin, an alternative currency created in this small community in the state of Veracruz. Grocer Cesar Garcia is the latest tradesman in Espinal to accept tumins, a word that means money in the local indigenous language. Each tumin is equal to 1 Mexican peso and can only be spent between the 200 locals who have signed up. It's used together with Mexican pesos in an effort to keep trade and resources within the community. For years, Espinal has stagnated, whilst other communities in Veracruz experienced a boom from oil discoveries. Academics and village leaders created the tumin to encourage villagers here to spend more, stimulating the local economy. The number of tumin users has doubled in the last year, but a currency based in just one village makes it difficult to do business with the rest of Mexico. There are businesses here who have the same problem as the village supermarket. They've stopped taking tumin because they say that their suppliers from outside of the community won't accept it as payment. Despite the tumin's limited circulation, officials with Mexico's central bank have expressed disapproval, saying the villages may have committed an act of, quote, monetary rebellion. The villagers reject that, saying that they're only trying to strengthen community ties. Castellanos and their fellow tumin users not only have to convince the rest of the town to use it, they now have to convince the Mexican government that it's okay to do so. John Holman, CCTV, Espinal.
So the central banks, after screwing up for 100 years, are a little bit browned off that we have solutions.
Yeah, well, you know, they can't be the only ones counterfeiting money.
Well, right now the Fed is printing off, what, $85 billion a month?
Yeah.
Okay, and it used to be called counterfeiting because it devalues the currency immediately when you just print it up from nowhere and dump it into the system to save Wall Street.
Well, wait, they're not actually printing it. Sometimes they're just entering numbers on a computer.
And that's how it works. Now, most people don't understand how the real economy, real banking works. Everyone knows that the economy is having problems, but they don't understand what the economy is. If you ask the average baby boomer, how does a bank work? They have no idea.
What they don't really realize is that actually a bank lends the money to the government at interest for profit.
And when they add interest, there's no way to pay it off. But we have a video here that's very important. It's from Dominic Frisby, and it's about the gold standard. And let's just run the clip. Make up your own mind.
This video is sponsored by Gold Resource Corporation.
Once upon a time, we used gold, or paper that represented safely stored gold, as money. It worked well for thousands of years, partly because gold is independent, and partly because it keeps its purchasing power. An ounce of gold buys you as much food, clothing, and energy as it did 50, or 150, or 1,550 years ago. Compare that to modern money, which seems to buy you less and less each year. 100 years ago, when the Federal Reserve Bank was formed, $1 would buy you this much oil. 50 years ago, it bought you this much. Now, it buys you this much. That's not very much, is it? In fact, in the 100 years since the Federal Reserve Bank was formed to protect the currency, the purchasing power of the dollar has fallen by this much. Why did governments stop using gold? In 1914, the British and German governments were committed to various spending programs and World War I, a war that probably needn't have happened, and neither had the money or gold to pay for it. So they took their countries off the gold standard and, free of its restraints, printed the money they needed. In 1971, the American government was committed to various spending programs and Vietnam, a war that probably needn't have happened. And it didn't have the money or gold to pay for it, so it took America off the gold standard and, free of its restraints, printed the money it needed. Sound familiar? If governments didn't have the power to run up deficits, these wars could never have happened. There wasn't the gold to pay for them. The bill is eventually paid by the people through the stealth tax that is currency devaluation by inflation. Now the world operates under a system of money and credit known as fiat. It's the law that what we use as money be money. The government and its banking agencies have the power to issue money, but no one else may do so. Unlike gold, of which there is a finite amount in the world, with this fiat system, there is no limit to how much money can be created, so inflation becomes inevitable. Look at the mess the UK and Germany got the world into after leaving the gold standard in 1914. World War I, German reparations, Weimar inflation, the rise of Hitler, and so on. Look at the mess the world has got itself into since 1971, when this fiat system became the global norm. An endless sea of wars, debt, poverty, social inequality, economic bubbles, rampant consumerism, and environmental rape. None of which could ever have happened to anything like the same extent, with that little bit of discipline and restraint imposed by gold. The ability to issue money is too much power for governments, banks, anybody, however well-intentioned. The best way to stop the abuse of power is to spread it as thinly and widely as possible. That's why we need to get back to a sound system of money. Unlike any bank, any corporation, any government, or any body, gold really is independent.
So those are the facts that nobody knows, okay? Nobody really looks into it, and you certainly have never seen that on mainstream news.
Well, all wars are bankers' wars.
Yeah. If they didn't finance the wars, we wouldn't have people killing each other.
Well, didn't the Americans throw the British out over their currency?
Yeah.
It wasn't about tea at Boston Harbor.
No, it had nothing to do with tea. And then taxation without representation. That's exactly what we're going through with a prorogue parliament or with Congress shutting down.
Yeah.
Okay.
They wanted another credit card.
But banks make money up out of nowhere. They charge interest. It's impossible to pay the interest off because they don't create the money that pays the interest off.
But the government has the right by law to create money itself and spend it into existence rather than borrow it from a private bank.
That's right. So every last government employee, every last government contractor should understand that the banks are simply mismanaging the monetary system the way it exists.
I don't think they really believe in the monetary system. It's just a big game for them.
I know. And remember, it creates poverty, which, of course, is abjectly ignored. One of the ways that they are creating a solution to poverty
is microfinancing in third world countries.
Okay, so you got this?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run the clip.
When Jaleesa Suma received a loan of $300 from a microfinance organization for women, her life changed forever. The loan helped her start a business selling dried fish at Bolobine Market in Conakry. Jaleesa makes $500 a month and employs 2 people. Jaleesa is one of the lucky ones.
There are millions of women looking for cash to start their businesses, but there are only 15 microfinance organizations in Guinea, and getting access to that microfinance money is not easy.
Women have to give 10% of the money they want to borrow to the microfinance organization and have a guarantor to get the loan. The interest rate is 1% and the money has to be paid back within a year. That's difficult in a country with high poverty and unemployment. Fatama Barry gave Jaleesa her microfinance loan. She's helped lift thousands of women out of poverty through microfinance. Fatama just received new equipment for fisherwomen through such financing. She says the government should take the lead in making small loans available if it's serious about job creation. The government has set up a new microfinance agency to make small loans more accessible. The reforms that have been made have definitely helped people like Jaleesa, but more changes are needed. Microfinance has lifted millions of people in Africa out of poverty, and so the hope of many Guineans is that it will become more accessible to them too. Yvonne Dege, Al Jazeera, Conakry.
Now, this microfinancing thing is spectacular.
Seems like a far better idea than borrowing money from the World Bank or the IMF.
Yeah, and when they do borrow money from the IMF, it only goes right back into American companies or international corporations to take their natural resources.
Yeah, it's kind of cool she gets to borrow money for microfinancing the same rate that the Fed lends money out to the banks.
Yeah, 1%. I know. I'd be happy if it was 0% because that would be more realistic. And
yeah.
But then again, you know, older people only understand interest and they cannot understand that the money's just made up out of nowhere and it's been mismanaged. But here we are.
But the one thing people need to start asking their governments is why, when we have the power to create our own money without interest, we borrow money from a private bank.
I'm smiling when you ask that question. There is no reason why we shouldn't have our own currency or just shed off this central banker nonsense. We're going to be talking about that in the future. Apparently, Parliament's coming back to work too, eh?
Okay. Yeah.
You
Not
know?
the U.S. government, though. Who knows when that's coming back to work?
Yeah, I know. But just do your research. Make sure you check out what we're talking about and realize that fractional reserve lending, making up money out of nowhere, is for real, and it's holding the entire species back. I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
We've got the Municipal Sustainability Project right now. It's on the internet. It's going viral overseas, and we've got a big meeting coming up on that October the 24th. We've also got a couple documentaries coming up.
Absolutely. Warriors and Thieves and Freeloaders.
That's all coming up, and we're going to be doing it tongue-in-cheek because we realize there's a solution, and you're just inheriting the problem. So thanks for being part of the solution. You're listening to Video Radio. Okay.